The marble floors of Preston, Hamilton and Associates echoed with accusation as my brother David's voice bounced off the walls of the executive conference room. "She's been stealing from the accounts for months," he shouted, jabbing a finger in my direction. "Ever since Grandpa got sick, Emily's been siphoning money into offshore accounts." I sat quietly at the massive oak table, my hands folded in my lap, watching the performance unfold. The other family members shifted uncomfortably in their Italian leather chairs. Mom dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Dad staring stoically ahead, Aunt Margaret clutching her pearls as if they might protect her from the scandal. Mr. Preston, the family's longtime attorney and executor of Grandpa's estate, maintained his professional composure despite the circus happening in his prestigious law firm. His bow tie didn't even twitch as David continued his tirade. "I have proof." David slammed a folder onto the table. "Bank statements, transfer records, everything showing how she's been stealing our inheritance." I glanced at the folder, knowing exactly what it contained. The same forged documents I'd watched David create late at night in Grandpa's study, when he thought the security cameras had been disabled for maintenance. "Ms. Harrison," Mr. Preston addressed me formally, "these are serious accusations. Would you like to respond?" I smiled softly, thinking of the last conversation I'd had with Grandpa 3 months ago, before the cancer took him. We'd been sitting in his garden, surrounded by the roses he'd tended for 40 years, when he'd handed me a small brass key. "The safe in my study," he'd said, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp as ever. "There's something you need to protect. David, he's not who we thought he was." Now, looking at my brother's perfectly tailored suit and expertly crafted mask of righteous indignation, I wondered if Grandpa had known all along what David would try to do. "I think," I said calmly, "we should wait for the security team to arrive with their equipment." Grandpa was very specific about how this meeting should be conducted. David's confidence wavered for just a moment. "Security team? What security team?" Right on cue, 2 men in dark suits entered, rolling in a large screen and computer setup. I recognized them from Harrison Security Solutions, the company Grandpa had founded 50 years ago. The company David had been trying to seize control of since the moment Grandpa's health began to fail. "What is this?" David demanded. "We're here to read the will, not watch a movie." Mr. Preston cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Harrison explicitly stated in his instructions that before the will is read, certain evidence must be presented." I watched the color drain from David's face as the security team began setting up their equipment. He'd always underestimated me, the quiet sister who'd spent her summers interning in Grandpa's security company instead of partying on yachts like he did. The sister who'd learned every aspect of surveillance and protection while he'd focused on looking the part of the wealthy heir. "This is ridiculous," David tried again, looking around for support. "Mom, Dad, are you really going to let her delay things with this theatrics?" Dad finally spoke, his voice tired. "Let's just see what your grandfather wanted us to see." The lights dimmed slightly as the screen came to life. The timestamp in the corner read 3 months ago, the night Grandpa had been rushed to the hospital for the last time. The footage showed Grandpa's study, dark except for the desk lamp. A figure moved through the shadows. David, though he clearly thought he was alone. We all watched in silence as he opened Grandpa's safe with a combination he shouldn't have known, pulled out documents, and began methodically photographing them with his phone. "That's not," David started, but his voice trailed off as the next clip began. This time, he was at Grandpa's desk, carefully scanning and editing documents, creating the very proof he just thrown on the table. The camera angle perfectly captured his face illuminated by the computer screen as he worked, erasing and altering numbers, changing dates, fabricating evidence of transfers that had never happened. "Turn it off," David shouted, standing so abruptly his chair toppled backward. "This is all fake. She's manipulated the footage." "The footage," I said quietly, "comes directly from Grandpa's personal security system. The one he had upgraded last year with triple redundant backups and blockchain verification. You know, the system you tried to disable last week when you thought no one was watching." Another clip started playing, David attempting to access the security mainframe, not realizing that every move was being recorded by a secondary system that only Grandpa and I had known about. "Mr. Preston," I continued, "I believe you'll find a detailed record of all these attempts in the envelope Grandpa left with you." The attorney nodded, pulling out a thick manila envelope sealed with Harrison Securities' official stamp. "Along with," he added, "the real will." "Real will?" Aunt Margaret's voice quivered. "What do you mean? Real will?" I turned to David, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. "Would you like to explain about the forge will you planted in Mr. Preston's office last week? The one that mysteriously left you in control of everything." The security team played one final clip, David breaking into the law firm after hours, replacing documents in Mr. Preston's files. The timestamp matched perfectly with the overnight security logs. "It's not. I didn't." David's carefully constructed facade began to crack. He looked wildly around the room, seeking an ally, finding none. "She's framed me. This is all an elaborate setup." "Emily," Mom whispered, her voice breaking, "is this true? Did David really?" I met her gaze steadily. Grandpa knew. He'd been watching David's attempts to take over the company for months. That's why he put extra security measures in place. That's why he gave me the key to protect the real records. Mr. Preston picked up a remote and paused the footage on a crystal-clear image of David forging Grandpa's signature on documents. "I believe," he said gravely, "we should proceed with reading the actual will, unless anyone has any objections." David lunged for the door, but the security team was faster. They blocked his exit, their faces professionally neutral, but their stance making it clear he wasn't going anywhere. "Now then," Mr. Preston continued, breaking the seal on the real will, "let's hear what Mr. Harrison actually wanted for his legacy." I sat back, watching my brother's perfectly constructed world begin to crumble. Grandpa had taught me that in the security business, the truth always comes out eventually. You just have to know how to protect it until the right moment. And I had protected it. Every last bite of evidence, every frame of footage, every digital fingerprint David had left behind thinking he was too clever to be caught. Because that's what Grandpa had trained me to do. Not just run a security company, but understand that true security isn't about locks and cameras. It's about knowing when to wait, when to watch, and when to let someone's own actions become their undoing. The leather portfolio containing Grandpa's reel will seem to carry the weight of decades as Mr. Preston opened it. David had stopped struggling against the security team but remained standing, his perfectly styled hair now disheveled, his confidence replaced by barely contained panic. "Before I begin," Mr. Preston said, adjusting his bow tie, "I should note that Harrison Sr. recorded a video message to accompany this reading. He was quite specific about its timing. The screen that had just revealed David's deception now showed Grandpa's face, recorded in his study 3 weeks before his death. Despite the illness that was consuming him, His eyes held the same sharp intelligence that had built Harrison's security into an empire. "If you're watching this," he began, "then Emily has done exactly what I knew she would, protected the truth until the right moment. And David," Grandpa's face hardened slightly, "has done exactly what I feared he would." Mom let out a small sob. Dad reached for her hand, his own face a mask of controlled disappointment. "I built Harrison's Security Solutions on a simple principle," Grandpa continued. "Trust must be earned, not assumed. For 50 years, we've protected other people's secrets, their assets, their legacies. But what good is protecting others if we can't protect our own?" The camera panned to show the garden where we'd had our last conversation, roses blooming behind him. I've watched both my grandchildren closely over the years. One spent summers learning every aspect of the business, understanding that true security starts from the ground up. The other, he sighed, focused only on appearing successful rather than earning success. David's face flushed red. "This is character assassination." He was sick, not thinking clearly. "Actually," Mr. Preston interrupted, "this video was notarized and verified by 3 independent medical professionals. Your grandfather was of completely sound mind." Grandpa's voice continued, "David, I knew about the embezzlement attempts 6 months ago. The secret accounts you thought you'd hidden so cleverly. I built the system that tracks exactly that kind of activity. I watched you try to manipulate the books, forge documents, prepare to steal your sister's inheritance. Each attempt was logged, recorded, and stored where you'd never find it. The screen split to show financial records, timestamps, transaction logs, a detailed record of every move David had made while thinking he was invisible. But Grandpa trusted me," David shouted. "He made me VP Operations." "No," I said quietly. "He made you VP of Operations to see what you do with that trust. And you failed the test." Aunt Margaret gasped as more records appeared on screen. Proof that David had been selling company secrets to competitors, planning hostile takeover attempts, even dating the daughter of our biggest rival while feeding her inside information. "Emily," Grandpa's voice softened, "has earned what I'm about to give her. Not through manipulation or deceit, but through years of quiet dedication. Through understanding that security isn't about power, it's about protection." Mr. Preston paused the video and lifted the will. The official terms are as follows: Harrison Security Solutions, including all subsidiaries, patents, and international operations, is hereby left in its entirety to Emily Harrison. The room erupted in chaos. David lunged forward again, but the security team held firm. "This is impossible," he shouted. "I'm the eldest. I'm the one who looks like him, acts like him." "Looks, yes," I cut in. "Acts? You've never understood how Grandpa actually operated. His strength wasn't in his image. It was in knowing things others didn't want him to know, and waiting for the right moment to use that knowledge." Mr. Preston cleared his throat. "There's more. David Harrison is hereby officially removed from all positions within Harrison Security Solutions. Furthermore, any shares he currently holds are to be transferred to the company's charitable foundation." "He can't do this." David turned to our parents. "Mom, Dad, tell him he can't do this." Dad stood slowly. "Actually, son, he can. And after what we just seen, he should." "The will also stipulates," Mr. Preston continued, "that evidence of David's activities has been forwarded to the SEC and FBI for investigation of corporate espionage and fraud." David's knees finally gave out. He sank into a chair, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "Emily," he whispered, "you can't let this happen. We're family." "Yes, we are," I replied. "That's why Grandpa gave you so many chances to prove yourself. That's why he watched and waited, hoping you'd make different choices. But family doesn't mean enabling betrayal." The video resumed, Grandpa's voice filling the room one last time. "To the rest of the family, I leave individual trusts, the details of which Mr. Preston will explain. But the company, my real legacy, needs someone who understands that power isn't about taking, it's about protecting." He looked directly into the camera, and I felt the same connection I'd had during our last garden conversation. "Emily, you once asked me why I spent so much time tending roses when I could hire the best gardeners in the world. Remember what I told you?" I did remember. Because watching something grow teaches you patience, and patience is the key to seeing the truth. "Exactly," Grandpa smiled. "You've watched, waited, protected the truth until the right moment. Now protect my legacy like you protected those security logs. Not with force, but with wisdom." The screen went dark, leaving us in silence, broken only by Mom's quiet crying and David's ragged breathing. Mr. Preston began distributing documents, official transfer papers, trust documents, legal notices. But I was looking at the garden visible through the law firm's windows, thinking about roses and patience and the different ways people reveal their true nature when they think no one is watching. The security team stepped forward. "Ms. Harrison, we need to escort Mr. David Harrison to meet with the FBI agents waiting downstairs." David stood on shaking legs. "This isn't over," he hissed as they led him toward the door. "Actually," I replied, "it's been over for months. You just didn't know it yet." As David disappeared with the security team, I turned to Mr. Preston. "The company files?" He nodded, producing another portfolio. "Everything's ready for the leadership transition. Your grandfather was very thorough in his preparations." "Of course he was," I said softly. "He built an empire on being thorough." Looking around the room at my shell-shocked family members, I realized this was just the beginning. David's deception had shaken their foundation, their understanding of who we were as a family. Rebuilding that trust would take time. But then again, I'd learned from the best about how to protect things while they grow back stronger. 1 month after the will reading, I sat in Grandpa's old office, now my office, reviewing security footage out of habit. The space remained largely unchanged. The same leather chair, the same wall of monitors, the same vintage safe that had played such a crucial role in exposing David's schemes. Only the roses on the desk were new, cut fresh from Grandpa's garden that morning. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Ms. Harrison?" My assistant Sarah appeared in the doorway. "Your parents are here." I nodded, taking a deep breath. This would be their first visit to the company since David's arrest. The media storm had finally started to die down. Headlines about the Harrison security heir's betrayal replaced by newer scandals, but the family wounds were still raw. Mom entered first, looking older than she had a month ago. Dad followed, his usual confident stride, now hesitant. They took in the office, probably remembering all the times they'd visited when Grandpa sat behind this desk. "You kept it the same," Mom said softly. "Some things don't need changing," I replied. "Just protecting." Dad cleared his throat. We saw David yesterday, at the Federal Detention Center." I waited, letting them find their words. "He wanted us to convince you to drop the charges," Mom continued. "He says he can explain everything." "I'm sure he can," I said, turning one of the monitors toward them. "Just like he explained these transfers, or these forged documents, or these leaked security protocols that put hundreds of our clients at risk. The screen showed a cascade of evidence, not just what had been revealed at the will reading, but everything we discovered since. David's betrayal went deeper than anyone had imagined. "We're not here to defend him," Dad said quickly. "We're here because—" He paused, struggling. "Because we owe you an apology." That I hadn't expected. "We should have seen it," Mom added. "All those years, we thought David was following in your grandfather's footsteps because he looked the part, talked the part. We never noticed that you were the one actually doing the work." "It's not about the work," I said, standing to look out at the city skyline. "It's about understanding what Grandpa really built here." David saw Harrison Security as a power to grab. I saw it as a responsibility to protect. Dad approached the window, standing beside me. "Your grandfather told me once that the true measure of security isn't in how many locks you have, but in knowing which ones matter most." "The family lock," I said quietly. "That's the one David broke. And the one you protected," Mom added, "even when it meant waiting, letting him think he was winning." I turned to face them. "Do you know why Grandpa loved roses so much?" They shook their heads. "Because they teach you that beautiful things need both protection and patience. Too much protection, they suffocate. Too much patience, they wither. The trick is knowing when to act." "Like you did," Dad said, "with the evidence." "I could have exposed David earlier," I admitted. "But Grandpa taught me to wait for the moment when the truth would do more than just punish. It would protect the company's future." A notification flashed on one of the monitors. David's preliminary hearing was scheduled for next week. The evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers were already pushing for a plea deal. "He wants to see you," Mom said softly, "before the hearing." I shook my head. No. Some conversations need to happen in their own time. Right now, my focus is on rebuilding what he almost destroyed. Sarah appeared in the doorway again. "Ms. Harrison? The board is ready for your presentation." "Thank you." I gathered my files, then turned to my parents. "Would you like to stay? See what Harrison Security is really about." They exchanged glances, then nodded. As we walked to the boardroom, I noticed Dad looking at the employee photos lining the hallway. Decades of security personnel who'd helped build this company. "My God," he murmured. "Emily's in half these photos. Working security rotations, manning the control room, installing systems, while David was posing for magazine covers," Mom finished. The boardroom fell silent as we entered. The table was filled with familiar faces, veteran security officers, technical experts, people who'd known me since I was a teenager learning the business from the ground up. "Good morning," I began, taking my place at the head of the table. "Today we're discussing the future of Harrison Security. Not just how we protect our clients' assets, but how we protect our own legacy." I clicked through my presentation, outlining new security protocols, enhanced verification systems, and stronger ethical guidelines. With each slide, I could see my parents' expressions shifting from uncertainty to understanding. The attempt to compromise our company from within, I continued, carefully avoiding mentioning David by name, showed us our vulnerabilities. But it also proved that our core principles work: patient observation, verified trust, and the understanding that true security is built over time, not bought with quick promises. The board members nodded. They'd all seen the evidence, all understood how close we'd come to disaster. Moving forward, I concluded, every decision we make will be guided by my grandfather's founding principle: trust must be earned, not assumed. We protect what matters most, not by force, but by wisdom. After the meeting, I found my parents waiting in my office. Mom was holding one of the roses from my desk, examining it carefully. "We never really knew him, did we?" she said. "Your grandfather. We saw the success, the power, but we missed the garden." "No," I corrected gently. "You just looked at the blooms instead of the roots. Grandpa built this company the same way he grew his roses, carefully, patiently, understanding that the strongest growth happens below the surface." Dad picked up a framed photo from my desk, me at 16, in my first security uniform, standing proudly beside Grandpa. "We've got a lot to learn about this company, don't we?" "We all do," I said. That's what Grandpa taught me. Security isn't a destination. It's a constant process of learning, adapting, protecting. A notification popped up on my phone. The FBI had discovered another of David's hidden accounts, this one containing classified client information he'd planned to sell. "He really would have destroyed everything," Mom whispered, reading the message over my shoulder. "No," I said firmly, "because Grandpa made sure the right people were watching. That's what this company does. We watch, we wait, we protect. Not just valuables, but values." As my parents left, I returned to the security feeds, a habit now as natural as breathing. Somewhere in the federal detention center, David was probably still plotting, still believing he could talk his way out of consequences. But he'd never understood what Grandpa had tried to teach us, that the greatest security comes not from what you take, but from what you're willing to protect. I picked up one of the roses, careful of its thorns. Tomorrow, I would plant new ones in Grandpa's garden. Some would bloom, some wouldn't, but all would be protected, because that's what we do at Harrison Security. We protect what matters, whether it's corporate assets or family legacies. And sometimes, if we're patient enough, we get to watch them grow stronger than ever.